All right, so here's the thing. I want to make a can't we all just get along kind of message. I want to work with other people. I want to find the common ground. All of those kinds of messages seem futile at this point. I mean, there's no attempt to understand my position or how it differs from what someone thinks of liberal or other positions that they've had or how we could work it out. Um, People have a very binary view. You're the way they are, and they think everybody on their side agrees with them, which is not true. And they think the other people are the way they are, and all of those people agree. They're very far away from doing some sort of a political calculus where every individual is a little tiny block that builds up the 7 billion of them to the world opinion. So I think we're at this situation where it's just time to mention there are checks and balances. You can elect a President Trump. He can do his discretion is incredibly powerful. And I think that's enough. He can't do anything illegal. There's checks and balances. Okay, in America, we have terrible civics education. So, um, there's India. So, what little we might understand of checks and balances is usually taught to us is the fact that there's the executive branch run by the president. There's Congress, which is the two houses, Senate and Congress. I mean, Senate and House. And then there's the judiciary. But that's just the federal, right? Okay. Now, it's great. You guys have Congress and the president. That actually can put the president above the law, that kind of situation. Depending. Doesn't necessarily lead to that sort of a corruption if it does, but fine. And then there's judiciary. But that's all just federal checks and balances. You also have the state version of all of those things state courts, which include county and city courts, right? Here's a nice country, Bhutan. This is just a leaflet theme, so this is a real map in Bhutan. All the water is fire. So, for example, Tom DeLay, I believe it was prosecuted and convicted by a state prosecutor in Texas because the jurisdictions all overlap. You also have a checks and balance of the press. Of course, I'm very concerned of him saying the press is the enemy of the people. I don't think he gets to pick and choose the press. I think the press, and this is part of my libertarian side, the press is properly market driven. You can't let every single individual person with a blog into the press room, but you can take, a selection. I would say half of them should be get to come based on their circulation statistics, right? And then the rest should be randomly chosen from people that just signed up, so that international and press from small countries and small towns and small countries ought to have a chance. But regardless, even if you don't let them talk to you, you just don't talk to them. There's no law that says you have to talk to them. They're still free. They're a check. There is activism, all the many kinds of activism, including philanthropy and direct activism, where you try to do the thing you want, like clean up a park that, just make a rule it has to be clean. You go ahead and clean it up. Or there's a million subcategories. That's a check. There is international stuff. Again, all the subcategories. International public opinion has an effect, which because it affects diplomatic relations. The international press can break stories that are just as impactful as the local press. Partially because the local press will be obliged to carry some of them. And there's economic factors. This is like the fallback of just what the reality of what happens as a reaction. Like Trump has not hurt the stock market. Well, that's one indicator. It affects a certain number of people, and that's a good thing. I don't want the stock market to collapse. So, he hasn't had a negative feedback there, but he could. And any president could. My point is not just saying this could happen to Trump. This is supposed to be able to happen to every president, and it can. Now, if you want to shut down all of these categories, just these ones that I thought, without going into sub-bullets that could have had sub-bullets, that's a lot of work. To try to do that would require some fascist actions, right? Provoke a revolution, declare martial law. Now, that might seem crazy, but I don't think any of my Republican relatives can claim that, fairly, because they were worried that, Obama was some sort of a Leninist that would declare martial law. So they have to admit that they think it is possible in the modern day for people to get elected that have that kind of an attitude. So this could certainly be one. I'm not particularly paranoid in the sense that while I say look at history, you should be scared. These are the signs of a there's historical indicators that we are at the precipice of a big problem, but we might be able to back out of it. It's like we had McCarthyism. Uh, it didn't turn into fascism. On the other hand, it was after fascism had been around, so it's scary that we even played with it then. So, maybe we would back out of this. I'm saying I'm not scared just because if it does happen, um, you know, interesting times. I've had a very difficult life, but one thing is, yeah, I'm a person that says stupidly and bravely, I am interested in interesting times. So if that's going to happen and I'm seeing the signs of it, then that would be bad. I'd like to stop that. But it's not like a fear that, oh my God, that can't happen. The world will be over. No, it'll be the same kind of world that they had most of my life in South America or all kinds of places around the world. It shouldn't happen here, but if people are too stupid to avoid it when they have the power to avoid it with a sufficient democracy to avoid it, what am I supposed to do? That's part of democracy, is that we are going to go the way that most of the people tend in a lot of respects. Except we also have checks and balances to mitigate that. So we're about to find out if law and order and the press and the states and cities and counties that have their own ideas of how they want to run their things, and the activists, if they can do anything or not. So I suspect they will, and that our system will once again prove that it's robust in the face of great challenges, and that our cultural dangerous illnesses are brief periods of time. Um, Sadly, that's not a big comfort because Germany could say the same thing. The Nazis were only around 12 years total, and really only 6 of that was, like, well, that's not true. It was all all of it. And I think it was 12. You guys can fact check me, put it in the comments. But it was a short period of time historically, but boy, very destructive and damaging, right? And we could have something like that, and it could be worse. It could be nuclear weapons that kill millions of people. Uh, who knows? So we've got to try to avoid that. Um, and we have a lot of checks and balances uh, that are capable and in place to do that, to avoid it. It's Los Angeles. All right. I'm sure you got my point.